Hey everybody, and welcome to another video where I'm going to be discussing my thoughts on the Edge of the Earth campaign for Arkham Horror the card game at the midpoint. So a few weeks ago, I released a video where I was discussing my initial thoughts after playing the first two scenarios, and I was pretty hyped. And in the comments, I had people say that they wanted to see a mid-campaign checkpoint as well as a discussion at the end of the campaign for my thoughts on the campaign. So this is what this is. This is the mid checkpoint. It's a bit more than mid. The size of this campaign is a little bit, seems to be a little bit smaller than the other ones. So, but it's still actually, like, by the time we're done, we should be at 9 scenarios, which is, as you know from the normal releases, is standard or above average, depending on the campaign you're looking at, which are usually 8 scenarios. It does feel a little bit shorter because some of the scenarios are same maps or repeats, so I'm going to kind of talk about this, my thoughts on all of that, as well as just my general thoughts on the replayability and what we have seen, what I've thought so far, and what has maybe changed since my first thoughts. I'm just getting a pen because I am going to have a spoiler-free section, like the last video, and then we're going to dive in and we're going to actually start looking at spoilers for people who've already completed the campaign or people who don't care about spoilers. Is my hype level as high as it was in the first video? I would say that no, it's still very high. I think this campaign is very, very, very good still for a first playthrough, which I would argue is like one of the most important playthroughs that you can have for your campaign, right? Your first experience should be really good. So I think this one is still one of my favorite blind playthroughs, competing only with Carcosa, Dunwich, because it was my first time playing a full campaign, so there's always going to be that excitement that I got out of Dunwich, as well as Dream Eaters. I also really enjoyed that one for my blind playthrough. Will this one keep that sort of thing going on replay throughs? Because on this channel we play these scenarios a lot. I have played Dunwich Legacy I've played Dunwich probably maybe 12 to 15 times. So I've played these campaigns a lot. So replays do matter more to me than I imagine they will to the general populace who plays this game. However, it's still an important thing to ask. Do I think, without spoilers, if this will be a good campaign to replay? Yes, I think it will. I think there's a lot of small things that, at least in your first 2 to 3 replays, it's gonna be exciting. And don't take my lack of hype that I had in the first video to seem it like I'm having a bad time with Edge of the Earth. It's rather that I'm starting to settle into the campaign and really the dread is still there, which is still really cool. It still has that feeling that you're just a bit too late, and it might be good that you were too late or might be bad that you were too late because something awful has happened and something awful might still be happening. So it has this really cool feeling that still exists in the campaign even at the midpoint. And there's a lot of just really clean designs in the scenarios. And one thing that I think is still really cool with this campaign that I believe I mentioned in this first video is that the scenarios are actually relatively simple, right? I think most of the complexity of this campaign comes from 2 things. Something called the Tekalili deck, which I won't get into spoilers here, but there's a deck of cards that provide a little bit of challenge and complexity to the game, as well as just the general structure of the campaign, as well as the campaign guide. There is a lot going on in here that I think it's a cool area to see the designers explore. The fact that the campaign guide and the campaign structure is where the majority of the complexity of this campaign is put into. So because of this reason, I actually think that this is going to be a great campaign for new players because the scenarios themselves are really simple. And it also really showcases what the designers can do and what they can succeed at while building a story that the player gets to experience. So if I had to choose a non-Dunwich campaign to start with, Edge of the Earth would probably be my #1 vote. I really am enjoying it. I'm excited to see how it ends. It's I think it's going to have it's telling a very unconventional kind of story. I don't imagine we're actually going to like fight something big at the end. It's not it doesn't seem to be leading into a story where we have this big final boss of a named entity that we all know and love at the end, which is really cool, right? Because like in all the previous campaigns, we fight a named person, not person, but a named entity from the mythos. And I think from the way that the vibe of this is going is that while there's going to probably be references that especially Travis would know, because he knows the mythos very well, for people who don't know the mythos, like I have vague Arkham Files references to the mythos, but I'm not too versed in the Lovecraft mythos specifically, like in the literature. However, for people like me, and then also people who know nothing, this is just telling a really cool story that's like its own kind of thing. And once again, like how Dunwich Legacy is the year or the future from the actual short story, there's the whole thing where there's William Dyer's and Danforth's expedition, which is all part of the intro, so this isn't spoilers, that this is kind of like all referencing that this is happening after. And it's such a cool thing that the designers do where your story is taking place after. So you're kind of like in the husk of a story. You're not experiencing the events as they are happening. Instead, you are experiencing the events after they have happened. So it's like walking around in the graveyard of an event, and it gives this really eerie feeling to the story, which is... I think I love that way of saying it too. It really is. It's just you're feeling like you're walking in the ruins of a disaster in this campaign. And I think once again the theme on this one, it's so good. It's really good. I still highly recommend it. I think it's, as I said, it's in my top. I think I even like it more on my first playthrough than Dream Eaters. And it's just a really good campaign so far. And I'm very curious to see how it holds up on playthroughs, and I'm excited to see how it ends, and I'm just really optimistic. And the fact that they can put this out as their, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th full campaign, right? Maybe not 7th, maybe 5th. We have Dunwich, Carcosa, Forgotten Age, Circle Undone, Dream Eaters, yeah, 7th, the 7th campaign, Edge of the Earth, right? So that's it's a huge testament to the skill of the designers and the storytelling of the designers. And I would love to like one day even just get a 1-second glimpse of their scratch pad for the future, because I imagine they have so many great frickin' ideas for upcoming campaigns, and I'm very excited to see what they can do in this big box format. But let's get into spoilers. So, if you do not want to see spoilers, you can go away from the video now. I will not be upset with you. I will not yell, scream, cry. I'll just be happy and accept that I'm very excited for you to play your Edge of the Earth campaign. But spoilers are about to begin, so you are going to want to get the heck out of here. Give them a second, close the video. Maybe they'll like, maybe they'll comment before they go. It's hard to say, but let's dive in. Get this out of here for a few seconds. So, in the last one I talked about, we played Ice and Death Part 1, and we also played Ice and Death Part 2, which I believe is this deck. So these were the two ones that I talked about in my first time through. I'm just going to pull this camera out a tiny bit more. So these are the ones I talked about, the only ones I played in my previous one. We did not play Ice and Death Part 3 or the next scenarios that came after that. So, what did I think of Ice and Death Part 3? So in Ice and Death Part 3, there's a bunch of these seeping pools of ice milk that just keep dropping enemies onto the battlefield over time. And while it was really cool to get another scenario in the same map, which I do really like, I still think this whole like checkpoint mechanic is a really nice way of giving the players some time to familiarize themselves with an area. explore that area without the pressure of feeling like you're under a time crunch, and also make new discoveries in each scenario. And in addition, one thing that I think is really cool and happens with Ice and Death is that it now gives a bit of metagaming knowledge into the future of your campaign experience. So, for example, a big one is the shelter value in Ice of Death part 0, where wherever you shelter, that's the amount of experience and victory points you get your next time through. So, with this knowledge going into your repeat playthroughs, it becomes less about exploring the map like it did on our blind playthrough, and now it's about finding the best shelter, which we know is going to be one of those top or far right locations. Which I think is kind of really cool, because the first time you play, ultimately that metagaming becomes unavoidable for at least our group, because when you have that knowledge, you can't just forget that knowledge. And when you want to play optimally, you have to sometimes just leave that knowledge out there. You need to just accept that that knowledge is there, and you need to work with it. So the first playthrough is very exciting because it's cold, the wind is biting, and you're like, we need to find shelter now. When the future ones, it's going to be like the cold is biting, we need to find the best shelter for us. And then in the next scenarios, we can spend our time and our clues getting into the smaller areas and then pick up the supplies that are there. So I still really like the map mechanic. However, I will say that Ice and Death Part 3 was probably my least favorite scenario of this campaign so far. I'm not a big fan of monster fighting scenarios where you just have to fight monsters because they're there and they're nonstop. Those aren't scenarios I personally enjoy. So if I have to point at one scenario right now that I think is my least favorite, it would be Ice and Death 3. But I think that overall, and people are going to say that it counts as one scenario, but I view them as 3 different scenarios. And I think that's the way the designers view them, and even just that we should, as players, view them. They are 3 different scenarios. Ice and Death is not one giant scenario, because you gain experience between each of them. It is 3 different scenarios. So Ice and Death 1, 2, and 3. Overall, I liked them all quite a bit, but Ice and Death Part 3 was my least favorite. So one thing we missed in between was our first venture into Fatal Mirage, but I'm going to get back to that one because I'm going to just talk about them in the order in which we have played them so far. Next notable scenario here is To the Forbidden Peaks. So this one's really cool. Let me get into this campaign guide and find the To the Forbidden Peaks. Oh, turn right to it. So in this one, it's really neat because, well, I mean, it has that cool flavor thing where you're just like, the easy map resonance. You gotta love when your map resonates with what you are exploring. And this had the level 0 all the way to level 5 to climb up the mountain. And the further you climb, the harder the game will get to you. How it does this is it randomizes a bunch of locations, and then you have your summit, which you just can get to. These locations all have the same backside, which is a pretty easy card to grok, which is just that you cannot enter this location unless all of the clues on the location directly below it have been discovered. So nice and simple. Really easy to kind of just grok, and they all have their own challenge, and they have a negative effect after you move to that location from a location below it. So climbing down the mountain ain't a problem. Climbing up the mountain, there's going to be some issues. This scenario also has all of the supplies that you gather from your from Ice and Death Part 1, 2, and 3. All the supplies you have gathered, you now get the pleasure of having to bring them up the mountain, which is so freaking cool. You have to spend actions to pick them up, and the game is going to cause you to drop them a lot. So you now have to make the choice, when is it worth it to grab these things, and what kind of stuff can we leave behind and should we leave behind because we are running out of time. It truly has that narrative feeling and that thematic feeling that it's hard to carry this stuff up the mountain, and time is of the essence, and you might not have time and you're going to need to leave things behind. And it kind of, I think, is a lot cooler than what could have been done. I think it was truly just an absolute flavor win with having to bring all this stuff up the mountain. I can't say it enough. I just really liked that part of the scenario. I like the little things like that. The little things that are just like that just resonate without being complicated, right? It just fits. Some other things that happen in this one. Let me just do. There's a boss fight. This guy comes back. In this one we did kill him. We didn't kill him in the first time, but we killed him in this one, so that's kind of nice. This guy has the effect at the end of the round, move all investigators at Terror of the Stars location to the location directly below it. So this guy, he pulls people down. Another thing that happens is there is a kill point in, I believe, one of the agendas. Yeah, Tragedy Strikes interlude. It happens on the first agenda shift, and you just lose one of your party members. They just get ripped apart by the Terror in the Stars. Terror of the Stars, rather. Which was really cool. I really dug it, and it was sad to see who we lost there, which I believe was Professor William Dyer. But still, I liked that kind of aspect of the storytelling where it once again fills that dread that I think was really cool for that one. Next up, just going to get rid of this for a little bit. We played our first foray. What's the word? Foray? Yeah, I think that's it. That's how you pronounce it. I haven't spelled it in my head. I can spell it. Can't say it. I'm just saying foyer because, you know, I love that room in my house. But in Fatal Mirage, this one is kind of like a dream. And you have less time as it goes. And you are basically, there's this prison of memories that as you Mirage, you get to reveal things and put things into play. And you're kind of just like building a dreamscape of memories from the people in your expedition. And then at a certain point, you hit the end of a memory, like right here, and then you have to fight a bad memory that person has. This is just some random one. And if you defeat that memory, you get to make that person resolute, which makes it so that they are better. They're a better card. They're a stronger card. And like Cookie, we made Cookie resolute in ours. That they are a stronger card, and that they are, I believe now, Travis does the campaign stuff, so I can't comment on this. But it makes it so that they don't die during interludes where people can die. They're like resolute. They're too strong. They are going to fight because you've taken the time to complete their friend quests in Mass Effect 3 so that they are good to go. This scenario was really cool. And this is the one that has the scenario question mark. So you can actually play it multiple times, which means that it's always kind of just a little bit where it falls in your campaign, and then also each time you approach it. At this point, we've only played it once. We are going to be playing it one more time. At least one more time. Travis says this will be the last time we have to play it, which could be the case for sure. However, we're going to be playing it one more time, and I believe the map, as you've already explored it, is going to be revealed to what you explored, and then you can go a different way to try to save someone else and make them resolute. I think it's a really cool scenario, and I really like the story behind it. I am curious to see how fun it's going to be having to play this scenario again and again and again and again, because the structure of it is actually relatively simple. However, I think it's pretty straightforward, and it allows you to honestly just play traditional Arkham. You get clues, you reveal locations, you kill enemies on locations. So like the feedback loop, you get to just play your decks, you get to earn some more experience, you get to earn some story objectives. So I think overall, the whole thing is just really just good. I think it's just like, just the gameplay function of it will be good enough that you'll just get to play Arkham, right? You don't need to it's not like a gimmick or like we're like Echoes of the Past or Miskatonic Museum where you're playing a game that isn't traditionally Arkham Horror the card game, but like a twist on it. In this one, you're just playing Arkham Horror the card game, so I think it's going to be a good scenario. The same one, likewise, I think on repeats for to the Forbidden Peaks. This is just a good old-fashioned Arkham Horror scenario where it does everything in its power to beat the crap out of you, and that's good. That's good Arkham. That's good Arkham. The last scenario I've played that we get to talk about is City of the Elder Things. And let me just start and say that the setup on this one is absolutely wild. Just map 1. There's 3 potential maps for this one. We played with this one with our limited camera space and our limited table space. This one just swallowed all real estate we had, both table-wise and visually, which is cool. You know, I'm glad that they have the big maps. It makes it a little bit juicy, makes the game a little bit more exciting, right, to have some big maps now and again. I do long for nice small maps. We did get a small map on this one, so maybe beggars can't be choosers, right? However, this one is a really cool scenario, and I really enjoyed my blind playthrough of it, and I think it's going to work really well on additional playthroughs, on repeats. Mainly because different maps, so there's 3 different maps for the setup of this location, which I think actually realistically this one will probably be the hardest. And I think this one, I don't know where the starting location is on this one, but does it say starting location somewhere and I'm just blind? This one also, this one I think is actually going to be pretty easy to manage too. But how this one works is that there are a variety of tokens on them that act as keys, like the rules from Innsmouth, and then key combinations do things. Your map layout and your key layout will change things drastically from scenario to scenario. So not only are there 3 different maps, but each different map is determined by, even further, its variance by the setup of these keys and locations. And in addition, this scenario actually has one of the most awesome fair act cards here, where as a lightning bolt, you can spend a clue to look at the revealed side of one of the city locations in your row or column, and you can also spend 3 clues during your turn as a lightning bolt to move to any location in your column or row, which means that you have easy access to move around depending on how things work. So while there is a lot of variance, there is an incredible amount of control that the players are given to solve these issues as they come up, which allows for the game to be put in the player's hands as opposed to something like Horror in High Gear where you're kind of just sitting and watching. There's a huge amount of control in the scenario, even with all the variance, which I think is what's going to make this scenario really fun. In addition, this scenario also has that kind of classic Arkham thing where there are a variety of goals that you can hit. A few of them are extra goals, and if you do hit them, that's just glorious gravy, right? So you don't need them to win, but the more you get, the better your win will be and the more experience you'll get, which means you kind of have a little bit of some juicy, fun, extra game to go with. This scenario is probably my 3rd favorite scenario of the campaign so far. So if I had to rank it, and I will because that's what I'm here, and that's what actually, oh man, this is tough. There's a lot of good scenarios so far. So at the bottom is Ice and Death Part 3. That's an easy one. At the top, my favorite one is Ice and Death Part 2. And then it's probably To the Forbidden Peaks, then City of the Elder Things, then Ice and Death Part 1, and then Fatal Mirage is kind of just in that weird wobbly space. I don't know what I really think of it yet. However, there's a lot of great scenarios in this campaign. I have a hard time. I like Ice and Death Part 1. The only one that I just don't, if I had to point at one and say I did not enjoy that one, and that's Ice and Death Part 3, but that's just because it's not my cup of tea. But that doesn't mean it's not going to be your cup of tea, right? It could be. All right, so those are all the campaigns that I can talk about here in great detail and my thoughts on them. However, I have a bit more experience with the Tekka-Lili deck. Tekka-Lili. With these cards, I actually have finally put some in my deck and drew them, so I can understand the effect of them. And I think they're really cool. I think they're really fair. I think they're really fun. I think they're given out at such a great rate where they feel very oppressive, but at the same time, their effects are so minor. Like, it just kind of sucks to lose a card draw. But there's a lot of cool interactions with the Tekka-Li-Li cards that I really like them as a part of the game. And there was a commenter on my last video of this who said that don't put the Tekka-Li-Li cards into your deck. Have a few cards on standby. That's like you have like the card reversed like this, and then when you draw it, you draw the top card of your own personal Tekka-Li-Li deck. So that's why you don't need to ever re-sleeve them, which is going to be something that we're going to do for sure in our next upcoming playthroughs of this campaign, because it does make it a little bit more convenient to do that when you are playing with sleeves in your game, which I imagine the vast majority of the people watching this video do play with sleeves. So the Tekka-Li-Lis are still a big win for me. I still really love them. Still really cool. And then the allies. One thing I want to talk about with the allies is that they're still really cool. Well, you see that fan out? Absolutely perfect. Like visual poetry. The allies are still really cool. And then when they die, spoiler alert, they die. Spoiler alert, dang. I should have marked spoilers at this point again. However, when they die, you can interact with with their gear after they're dead. Like, you can have, at certain points in the campaign, you get to interact with party members, and if they're dead, you instead get to grab their unique item, which is kind of like a cool way to have a memory of them in your deck, which I think is just really neat, really cool, and also I think just really resonates with the story being told. So to echo what I said earlier in the spoiler-free section, I think this campaign is phenomenal. I'm very excited to do a replay of it. I'm very happy that they have this kind of quality with the campaigns at this point in the game's lifespan, and it makes me very optimistic still for the future of the game, and I'm excited to play more. I'm excited to finish it up, and I'm excited to talk about this campaign again in my final video, and then maybe if not that, there's going to at the very least be a video of Bryn, Travis, and I talking about it. I do like this video where I talk about it myself. It allows me to ramble on, and if there's one thing I love, it's rambling on. So thanks for watching. I hope you guys are having a good Sunday. I believe this video is coming out on a Sunday. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting the channel. If you like this kind of content, be sure to comment, like, subscribe, all the stuff to give us feed us into the YouTube algorithm, because it loves it when people do that. And in addition, if you want to support the channel, a great way of doing that is also by supporting our Patreon, where at certain pledge levels you can get a variety of awesome content, including patron game days, unique Patreon videos, both gameplay and other things, and then on the lowest level, the Acolyte tier, you get to influence our content and also just get access to the other posts that go there that are also unique. Thanks for watching. Have a good one, and as always, GG's.